morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Lena Liu, and I'm a marketing director here at Trustly. And today I'm super excited that we have a couple of our partners on with us to talk about real-time payments. So as many of you guys know, real-time payments, the demand has been on the rise steadily over the last couple of years. And according to a payments.com 2023 report, 32.5% of retailers are planning to add real-time payments to their checkout experience in the near future. So I think the discussion we're having today is very timely, and I'm excited we have perspectives from different parts of the faster payments ecosystem represented today. So to represent the bank perspective, we have Cross River, and then us over here at Trustly will be representing the fintech perspective. And then we have PointsBet representing the merchant perspective, as the sports betting industry has really been at the forefront of adopting and implementing real-time payments. And then last but not least, we have Reed over at the Faster Payments Council, who is going to be moderating our discussion. So before I hand it over to Reed, I want to remind everyone that we will be taking questions during the session. So if you do have one, feel free to type it into the Q&A section of the console. So with that, I will go over, I'll hand it over to Reed, and he can kick us off with some introductions.
All right, thanks, Lena. The payments ecosystem is evolving at a rate we've never seen. We've got new payments rails coming online, enabling faster payments that keep pace with the 21st century digital economy. Businesses are seeing the value in instant payments. Financial institutions are investing in bringing their promise to the market, and fintechs are putting all the pieces together in ways we couldn't have imagined a few decades ago. I'm Reed Lutanen, Executive Director of the U.S. Faster Payments Council, an industry association that brings together all the different facets of the payments ecosystem to advance the United States to safe, easy to use, ubiquitous faster payments. And I'm thrilled to be moderating this discussion among a group of leaders in faster payments. As we get going, I think what we want to do first, though, is put a little context around this and put some context to our participants as well. So I'm going to have Eric go first. If you would introduce yourself and kind of give a little perspective on where you're coming from.
Yeah, hey guys, good to meet everybody. Eric Faust, VP of Banking Partnerships here at Trustly, and in particular for this conversation, I lead our group's efforts around ODFI money movement, so enabling our merchants to access the RTP rails through our banking partnerships with entities like Cross River, as well as ACH. Been at Trustly for about 1.5 years, and prior to that, I think this is relevant for the group, I was at Early Warning for 6 years, where we launched the Zelle network, and I led the RTP integration for Zelle back in 2017 and 18. So very familiar with the faster payments landscape, and excited to have this conversation, Reed.
All right, great. Adrian, why don't you go next? Tell us who you are and where you're coming from.
Sure, my name is Adrian Torres. I'm a payments partnership manager at Cross River Bank, specializing in ACH and RTP. I'm an AAP. I've been in the payment space for about 9 years. I've been in banking for longer than I care to admit. And I'm based out of New York, excited to be here today.
Great. Jake.
Thank you, Reed. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today. My name's Jake Williams. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at PointsBet. We're a sportsbook in the United States. We're in 14 states now. We've expanded pretty rapidly over the last couple of years. And one area that I oversee and is a big focus for us is our payments vertical. So I'm very excited to be here today. Prior to PointsBet, I worked in gaming around the world. I grew up and worked in Australia. I've lived and worked in Europe, and now here in the US. So I've seen some different perspectives from the sports betting side in particular, and certainly interested to dig into some of these topics today.
Perfect. And right before we get started, we kind of wanted to poll our attendees to get a little perspective on whether or not the folks in the audience have ever used or a faster payment. So I'm going to launch the poll here, and hopefully you guys will see that and be able to respond.
This is the part where the speakers should all put a wager on what % of the audience do you think has actually used the RTP rail?
Yeah. Any takers on the action? What are the odds? What PointsBet are you going to put this up on the?
Yeah, I guess we'll have an over/under at 79.5%.
Oh. Ooh,
I was gonna go 80, so I'm gonna just 1% up you.
Yeah, I'm taking the under for sure.
I'm gonna cheat because I can see the responses coming in. I'm gonna take
no.
Oh, I can see them now. Oh, they are there. Sure, yeah. Fair enough. I wasn't looking over there.
Eric, sometimes we need balanced action. So if we get one over bet and one under bet, sometimes we're happy.
Perfect.
All right, well, it seems like we're kind of running out of, only 74% of our audience wanted to vote at all, but it's close the poll. I think it's going to show us the answers, or maybe not. But anyway, the response, we got 54% no, 46% yes. So the under on that 79.5 wins that. So I'll be collecting that later.
Got some work to do on the bookmaking side, maybe.
That's, I think, just really quickly responding to that, that's sort of indicative, I think, of where we are as an industry and as an ecosystem. We're in a stage of a lot of development, a lot of, implementation projects have been kicked off, but not all of them have been completed and put into production yet. And I think that's some of the stuff we're probably going to get into when we start to talk about some of those market trends, because the United States continues to be in that state of rapid development and deployment. The RTP network's been in market for 5 years now, and we're tracking toward the launch of the FedNow service in the middle of this year. At the same time, there are other forms of faster payments that weren't obviously included in the poll, such as push to card. They continue to identify and address needs in the marketplace as well. So there's lots of different stuff going on there, and I think there's just a ton of activity there. So Eric, what do you think the market's telling us about RTP and faster payments in general? I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think we're in a really interesting time with faster payments in general. Expectations are currently evolving, right? They haven't fully evolved. They're in the process of evolving. And I'll use the point of, 30 years ago when I went to go make a payment, I'd have to grab my checkbook and find an envelope and get a stamp. And my expectation was once I put that in my mailbox for the mailman to come and get that payment would come out of my account in 3 to 7 days-ish. And that was my expectation. And I remember making my first online banking payment back in 2002, where I had to enter in my account number and routing number. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, I was delighted. Like, I was excited that I didn't have to find an envelope, and I didn't have to rely on past Eric to get stamps. I could literally just sign on and enter in my account number and routing number. And I saved time, I saved money. And that transaction showed up in my bank account 2-3 days later. So it crunched it down. And fast forward 20 years later, that delight is gone. Like that's fully an expectation now. My thoughts around the payment speed have fully evolved to be, I should be able to make a payment online without having to give my account number and routing number up. And it should happen within a day or two. With the advent of faster payments, though, I have an example I'll talk about in a little bit or a little bit later on. When things happen immediately, there's a little bit of that delight feeling that I had back in 2002, where it was like, oh, I don't have to worry about this anymore. It's already done. So for me personally and professionally, my psyche is starting to do this evolving where now I'm hoping I can always do faster payments for all of my payments. I can't yet, but eventually we're going to get there. And eventually the market will evolve to, that's no longer this want or desire, it's an expectation. We got a couple years to go, but right now the market's telling us that things are starting to evolve to the point of being delightful.
Yeah, and I think we're going to touch on it later, but that notification back that the payment's been completed and received is such a big part of this. For anybody who's used the read receipt in your email,
Right.
you've got the energy, right? Okay, Jake, what do you think?
To steal some terminology from Eric, like, we're all about delighting our customer, and our customer is the end user who's watching sports, placing bets on those sports. So just to give some further context, we really hone in on and focus on being the home of in-play and live betting. As you know, watching a sporting event, things happen quickly, things move. It is always real time, and that's our philosophy when it comes to building our sportsbook product for our customers. And an enormous part of that is the deposit and withdrawal methods that we use. We obviously work very closely with our partners Trustly on making sure we're doing everything we can to give our customers what they need. And I think the biggest shift, at least for me personally, and we do have some areas of our business that still, believe it or not, involve checks, but the vast majority has all translated and moved towards real time. And essentially what that means for us is we need to be where the customer wants to be. It's no longer a nice to have. It's no longer a feature button or a feature tab. It's just the expectation now. It's what people assume will be there and is part of their experience. So we've worked really hard on trying to match that expectation. And RTP basically is that current version of delight for our customers, where you win your bet, you're very excited, you go into your account, you hit withdrawal, and that money can be in your account pretty much instantly these days, which is a fantastic experience for customers. It goes to some of the core principles around speed, integrity, just understanding where your money is, making sure the sportsbook is doing everything you expect. So I think today's discussion and the entire approach around real time, A, feeds back to what we're trying to do anyway across our entire business, and B, to delight our customers and give them that experience. We obviously are reliant on other industries like the banking, the finance, and our partners to help us deliver that. So we're really, really focused on that. I think the poll question may have given away a little bit of a tell there, where I think about it all the time. I don't even think about it 80% of my time. It's 99% of my time about how we can continue to improve our experience for our customers. And I guess we're still, a while away from it being a ubiquitous experience for all of PointsBet's users, but we're certainly catching up on the product side, on the technology side, on the real-time side. And pretty soon, or in 12, 18, 24 months, when we do this again, I hope we're talking about the next iteration, and also that RTP is the baseline and is the foundation that fuels further innovation and development in this space.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly there, that it's really matching up how everything else in the world works these days with the payment, right? So the payment needs to keep up with all the other stuff that people are trying to do. And Adrian, what do you think? What is the market telling you?
For sure, from the banking side, a year ago, the conversations we were having with our clients for onboarding for RTP, they were there, but they weren't as, our clients weren't as hungry for it. I'd say the conversations we're having now as we onboard new clients, almost all clients, want to talk about RTP on top of obviously our other payment rails, but it is definitely like the hot topic. I think that, to Eric's point, everyone wants that instant gratification, right? Like me as the end user, if I can get funds on a Saturday when I'm at home doing what I need to do, or I have to wait till the ACH network is awake on a Monday, I clearly, as an end user, I prefer to get it, on the Saturday. The Clearinghouse just published that from Q3 to Q4 in 2022, there was a 15% increase of transactions in the RTP network. So definitely it's continuing to trend up. And I think honestly, it's going to become the norm once we get to a higher adoption rate of reaching DDA accounts in the US. I think right now it's about 62%. I think to Jake's point, that's what people want, right? They want that instant gratification. They want their funds in their account. It's their money, and they should have it when they need it, 24/7, 365. So.
Yeah, for sure. And we're about to get into what I think of as a bit of a case study, looking at the PointsBet business as a sort of microcosm of this transition more generally. But we did get a question that I think is sort of relevant to what we're talking about right now, which is we've been covering off on RTP and some of the stats around RTP's usage. But we obviously, and I mentioned this in my opening, we've got another instant payment network in FedNow coming online this summer. So any thoughts, and I'm going to stick with you, Adrian, first, since I've already got you on the spot here, but any thoughts on how FedNow might affect, the question is the current setup, but I think just more generally how it'll affect the marketplace when it comes to, faster payments and instant payments.
For sure, obviously with all of these, any new payment rail, this is the newest payment rail, RTP, in the last 5 years, there is going to be that buffer of time, right? Like you talked about, there's a ramp up time, implementation with the banks getting up and running. I know people are starting to work on FedNow now, but I think, there obviously will be overlap. I'll be interested to see clients that are currently using RTP, what the appetite would be for flipping over, or what particular, scenarios or use cases FedNow might be better for. So I guess that's something definitely to look for down the line.
Yeah, hey Reed, if I can, I'd like to chime in on that question as well. So FedNow, is the complement to RTP for many financial institutions out there who decided to not connect into the Clearinghouse's RTP network for a whole litany of reasons. Those reasons can vary from just business models don't justify it, or they feel more safe with the Fed owning the payment rail. So I think the coming of FedNow is going to increase the number of financial institutions that are able to support real-time, 24/7, 365 payments here in the US. If we're pontificating, I don't expect either rail to have complete ubiquity like ACH, right? So I do not expect to see all 11,000 financial institutions connect into both real-time payment rails. And so it's going to be up to entities like us and working with our banking providers and our merchants to create intelligent routing systems. Or we can interrogate payments in real time to see, is this payment on the RTP network? If not, is it on the FedNow network? If not, then we can go to ACH or alternative payment methods. But if anything, I think the FedNow rail coming out this year is going to really propel us into expecting real-time payments to be an option as opposed to being delighted when we see a real-time payment as an option.
Yeah, I just wanted to tack on there, Eric. I think you're right that at least not anytime soon should we expect either of these rails to connect to every FI in the country. In fact, for that reason, the Faster Payments Council's network committee put out a paper on the different models of interoperability to help people kind of get their minds around how might we expand the reach of these networks to include the other without them necessarily, both having to achieve that reach. So that's something you guys can check out on the website. Jake, any thoughts on how FedNow is going to upset the table here?
Honestly, I think just holistically, anything that is a positive evolution for our customers, any iteration that helps them, or even just innovation, we're obviously very, very interested in. I think the challenge for gaming has been traditionally that the pass rates, or the failure rates, I should say, haven't been where we need it, just because of the evolution of gaming in the United States and more legislatively than anything else. So we're still early stages. So I'm very keen to see how this evolves, and what we had a couple of years ago to what we have today will be vastly different, hopefully, to what we have in 5 or 10 years from now. So anything that evolves quickly, we're really, really interested in.
Cool. Well, I think it's time to kind of dive in a little bit and kind of make this a little bit more real for folks in the audience. And I'm going to start again with you, Eric, but then I also want Adrian, you to weigh in on this. So when you're thinking about the RTP network, what are some of those everyday use cases? Obviously, Jake's covered his, and we're going to get into his a little bit more in detail here, but what are some of those use cases out there, and how does the RTP network, and I guess faster payments more generally, impact the everyday person?
Yeah, so anytime that I'm speaking on one of these like webinars or panels, I like to bring in real life experiences. And so last year, or this past summer, I had a branch go through my roof. And apparently if your roof is older than 20 years old, you can't just patch it, you got to replace it if it's an insurance claim. It was an insurance claim. And so I had the roofers come out, tear off my entire roof, come back, put the roof back on, or put a brand new roof on. And my insurance adjuster came out to check the roof and make sure that all the work was done. We got through the inspection, he came inside, we're sitting at the kitchen table, he goes through his laptop, completes everything, and then presses send or approve or whatever was on his laptop to say, yep, it's been done. We say our pleasantries, he gets his shoes on, and then I get a notification on my phone that I just received a payment that was in excess of $20,000 into my checking account. And I looked at him and I was like, wait, you guys use like real-time payments to send insurance claims? He's like, absolutely, yeah, this is great. And again, we go back to that whole point of delight. I was excited because I was like, oh, I don't have to go like cash a large check or wait for you guys to do all the paper processing to, so I can get the payment and then send the payment off to the roofers. That's a real life personal experience that I had. And aside from the use case example that Jake's going to walk through here in a little bit, disaster relief payments, this isn't a typical daily sort of thing, but it's very impactful when you think about the wildfires that happened in California, or earthquakes that happened in Turkey, or insert disaster where someone needs to have access to cash now for some reason. Monday, or it's a holiday, a Sunday at 11 p.m. when the banks are sleeping, right? Having access to cash and riding these rails is really impactful. And then I think another example that is prevalent is in the gig economy payroll area. Right? So gone are the days where you got to wait 2 weeks for the money that you earned on the 1st of the month and get paid out on the 15th of the month. If you do work on a Saturday, you can get paid on a Saturday. So I really think, and I'm seeing the gig economy kind of shifting the way that payroll is done by leveraging these real-time payments and allowing folks to move from the paycheck to paycheck model that typically has a 2-week time period or a week time period in between, and getting cash on demand. As soon as the work and the job is complete, they're able to get paid.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one, the payroll one. And I think in particular, when you think about, one of the questions we often get is like, well, is this going to sort of, what are the economics here? How is this going to be beneficial to me when it comes to, and I think thinking about things like that, that really just increase the number of transactions that are going to happen, right? So you take an employee who, traditionally we paid once every 14 days. Now maybe they're paid every day, or every day they work, which maybe is 10 transactions instead of 1 over a 2-week period, right? So more, growing the pie of what's being transacted can be a powerful thing of this too. Looks like you had.
Yeah, I get excited when I talk about this sort of thing, because like for me, I've been in the workforce for 25 years, right? So I'm used to getting paid every 2 weeks or every 15 days. It's just, that's how it's been done. But when you look at individuals who are coming out of high school or college, and they're coming into the workforce and they're getting paid every day, that changes their mentality. Their expectation now is, if I should be getting my funds, the money that I earned, the same day or the next day, right? But what if they have to move or transition into what I'm used to? It's a shock to the system, right? And so it's really fascinating to kind of see these sorts of things actually come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, what do you think about, what use cases are you seeing out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Eric obviously hit the nail on the head with a lot of those there. My biggest point for need the money right now were definitely the insurance, right? So car insurance, car accident, you get that paid, travel insurance, those type of scenarios. Also, for me, what we're seeing is a lot of anything where there's a digital wallet, right? So crypto off-ramping. Obviously, Jake's going to talk about the PointsBet use case for online gaming. I've seen it with virtual card off-ramping, anything that basically you have a virtual wallet and you want to off-ramp, right? So it's over the weekend, you are on your crypto account and you want to get access to your fiat. You should be entitled and able to get that immediately and not have to wait until, Monday through Friday to get that. I also think there is, benefit in using RTP as kind of a backup rail. So say you are just using typically ACH, but something happens operationally, you don't have the funds to send your clients on a Friday, whatever the case happens, or say you're trying to do payroll and for whatever reason you can't get it through by your cutoff time Friday, to be able to have that backup to send Saturday morning, I think is huge than having, your employee wait until a Monday or Tuesday using ACH. But for sure, to Eric's point, everything he said hit the nail on the head. I personally see it to be a good use case for anything, right? Like anytime someone needs to be paid, why not do it instantly if you can?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I used to sort of bristle at this use case discussion, because I think it sort of does sometimes lead us to think like, oh, well, it's only useful for certain use cases. I think as long as we're sort of thinking about these are just examples, but really, any legal way, any legal reason why one person wants to pay another, this could be a good way to do it. One other one that I've, just to sort of continue before we dive in to you, Jake, I don't want to delay too much, but auto lending and the funding of auto loans. We've been talking to one financial institution member of ours who was telling us that they implemented RTP for that purpose, and without changing anything else about that business, they saw increases in their business, that they were winning more loans because the dealerships were opting for that for them, because they were going to pay it out instantly as opposed to somebody else who maybe is going to pay it out the next day or something. So there are opportunities here that you can, especially as an early adopter. So, okay, Jake, we want to dive in a little bit on what you guys are doing over there, and you explain yourself a little bit. So first of all, kind of what was the driving force behind your decision to implement the RTP network in your flows?
If you think back from a United States perspective to what people's gambling experience might have been, for the most part, it would have been Super Bowl squares at the office, pools, brackets, etc. Or you go to Vegas. People go to Vegas. There's sports books in Vegas. And what do you do in Vegas? If you go once a year, you go up to the counter at a sports book and you hand over your money and you place a bet. And that's how you transact. So that's been the traditional view of it could only be done in Vegas. Now it's expanded beyond Vegas to many more states. We're in 14 states now across the country. However, it's not legal everywhere. So some of the earliest challenges we faced was basically the legalities around online gaming, whether it's allowed, whether it's not, and the rightfully so hesitancy across payment providers, banks, and other institutions to say, okay, do we want to sprint 100 miles an hour into this online gaming thing that's brand new, or do we want to take our time? So I think we've gone past the early stages of let's take our time to unwind everything that's happening with online gaming to the point where we basically poll customers. We talk to our customers all the time, and one of the main items that always comes up without fail is withdrawals, let's just call it, which is basically I won money, it's my money, to the analogy of I worked Saturday, I deserve to be paid on Saturday, or the 4 of us or 10 people out at dinner and you split the check, but someone takes it and you look at each other and say, okay, well, I'll just send you money now. It's not let me get it next time as much anymore. It's not other ways to do it. I'll send it to you when the ACH, is open on Monday, which were some of the things that we faced. We had certain options available to customers where they would have to wait. Plenty of people watch college football on a Saturday. Some of the earlier games you might win a bet, and it's the middle of the day on Saturday. And if someone called me and said, "Hey Jake, I won $100 on LSU. Can I get my $100, please?" My answer typically would have had to have been, "Yeah, but I'll have to get it to you on Monday or Monday afternoon because there's nothing I can do today. Certainly not tomorrow on Sunday. And is that okay?" And they would just look at you like, "What are you talking about? Nothing else that I do anymore is in that vogue." Certainly, people that have lived through checks and that type of experience might be a little more lenient, but for the most part, it was a delayed experience, sometimes 2 to 4 days delayed. And that caused further flow-on effects to, well, are these people serious? Why would they delay sending me my money? Or why are they holding my money? Or should there be any concerns about my account at PointsBet? There never was. It was just a systematic thing that has now morphed into real time, which is the perfect illustration of an evolution and advancement in our industry that allows us to focus and hone in on those customers which want that real-time experience, which we've learned is basically everyone. So to your use case question before, the use case is for everyone in our industry. They want that instant processing, instant gratification, and they want to basically be able to feel like their money is secure, they can play with this sports book and have absolutely zero concerns. So we looked at it and it was a very simple decision, to be honest, Reed. It was, we need this, we need it now. There's plenty of other back-end items that we can get into later on about just safety and security and giving certainty to customers, etc. But we have full confidence in that, certainly through our existing partners, to make sure that that's not a concern for us or our customers. And now we're in the real-time world, and it is a bit trickier because if things are in 2 days, you get a little bit of time to get yourself organized and together. We do a lot of that up front now, and we obviously have those instant RTP transactions that take place every day in our business across many, many states, and it'll only continue to expand. So it's really been one of the most positive experiences that we've been able to offer to our customers probably in the last 12 months. There's plenty of new betting features. There's plenty of other things that we offer them around product iterations and things like that. But for the most part, this impacts basically every customer, and they get a better experience, and it doesn't cost them anything. So everyone's delighted by that.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing I have to say, Jake, is if somebody called me and said that they bet on LSU, I would probably just hang up on them as a former Arkansas Razorback. But that notwithstanding, I think one thing that we sort of shortchange, we being sort of pundits and everybody who's not actually in the throes of building this stuff, is like, okay, so the RTP network exists and it connects one DDA to another, that's pretty much what it does. But you need other things in order to make an experience that your customers can actually use in order to fund their account and that you can use then to pay out to them. So obviously I'm assuming you guys have partnered up with some other folks in the space to sort of make that happen. And so as you're going through that process, what were you thinking about? What were you looking for in those partners?
It's really simple things, to be honest. It's just, I mentioned the word before, integrity. Like integrity when it comes to people's money, people's experience is really, really critical. So that certainty and integrity around the entire system, the entire process. We take hundreds and thousands of bets every minute, every day, all day. A lot of that is in real time during a sporting event. So our mantra is really around that live betting in-play experience, and that maps over to the payment side as well. So when you deposit, you want to know instantly, click of the finger, that your money's in your account and you can place those bets. So if it's 3 minutes before halftime of the Super Bowl and you want to bet on something in the first half, we facilitate that on the product side. We also want to do the same on the withdrawal side. So it's really about having our partners understand what our customers' needs are, therefore what our needs are, and they're just working together holistically to do that. And some of those things aren't sexy around real-time monitoring of the funds, for example, of the cash flow, things like that, understanding from different back-end ways to get access to information. Because if Reed bet on Arkansas and they're playing LSU and they're up 21, probably 28 in the second half, as usual, Reed, there's certain things that we need to be doing in those moments. If you call us and say, hey, I sent in a deposit, where's my money? Or I've sent a withdrawal out, I've hit proceed, or send me my cash, what's going on with that? So there's, like I said, a lot of other items on the back end as well that go into the overall decision making for us. But for the most part, it's the pretty simple core principles that we have that we want to match with our partners. So then, when everything's good, there's not too many issues and not too many urgent phone calls or emails, but it's really when things don't go well, you have that trust and reliability with your partner that you have surety that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you kind of went down that path, because one thing I was thinking about, and I didn't say this when I was introducing myself, but before I was at the FPC, I spent about 15 years at Walmart working on payments acceptance. So have some familiarity, obviously, with the customer payment flows. And one of the things that I know from that experience is that a lot of different processes are built on assumptions around the timing of payments and around how the payment flows work. And now you're bringing in some different payment flow that works differently. Were there any sort of technical impacts and considerations that you guys had to work through?
Yep. No, there's a million. There's just like scheduling people to be on top of a lot of things now becomes a 24/7, 365 thing for us, where in the past it was sort of that anyway, but not so much. Certainly testing and QAing and understanding if things were to break, how would they break? I don't know all the rails perfectly. I don't know all the back-end stuff. I have no idea about how ACH works generally to the levels that you three may. So it's really just trying to understand all those different components, especially things that are outside of our control. Because for the most part, within our technology, within our system, which we own our own technology stack, which makes it probably easier for us compared to some others in our industry that may not, it's really just understanding all of the different areas where things can and do go wrong. We don't expect 100% uptime. We don't expect everything to be 100% perfect. And it's just working together on those so that, again, we have that confidence that if there is a customer issue or just a general issue that we need to deal with, we're all there to fix it all at the same time. And if that's going to be Sunday after the Super Bowl or during the Final Four coming up or any other time, that reliability is critical.
Yeah, Eric, I want to bring you in on that question a little bit, if you don't mind. This is slightly off script, but you guys work with lots of different merchants who are enabling new payment flows and new payment types. So I would guess that what Jake just described is typical, but what are some of the things that you help with in terms of like a playbook or a roadmap for folks who are trying to onboard?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what side of the coin you come from, because RTP has been around for 5 years now, right? And so 5 years could be a long time, and it's tried and true. But to a lot of merchants, this is brand new, scary stuff. They've never actually dealt with having money leave their accounts during non-bank hours. And so even talking through some of the customer support issues is something that we hold very close to our value prop, because we want to make sure that the call centers of these places like PointsBet are equipped with the knowledge that they know the funds are going to be sent, and if it's RTP, it should be arriving in the consumer's accounts within seconds. Outside of that, though, there's some cash flow questions that merchants have, right? So typically the first use case that gets onboarded is a B2C use case. So the merchant sending money to a consumer, and we've already kind of outlined what sort of use cases those are. But when you're pushing money out in real time, you're typically not getting money in real time from your other ventures. So for PointsBet, you're probably not pulling money in instantly via the RTP network, because there's some hair there to address on that use case for a pay in on the RTP network. So there's cash flow that you have to address and make sure that before you launch this, you have your RTP account funded up, and you can have the foresight into the process to make sure that you can avoid things going bump in the night, not being able to process those payments. And anytime that there's an issue with a payment, we have dedicated customer service representatives that work with our merchants to resolve them. So there's a lot of questions around it. And then what's the really fun part is when a merchant actually launches it, there's more questions because now they're actually in it. Like now they know what to ask. And we help to address those questions now that we've been in the game for RTP for a couple of years. We put those questions up front so that they're not unanswered questions. They're already up front and addressed as they're going through the implementation process.
All right, and apologize if you guys could hear my dog in the background. Somebody must have walked by across the street or something. She's anyway, Adrian, I've been neglecting you for too long, so I want to bring you in here because I know you and Cross River and Trustly are partnered up on a lot of things when it comes to faster payments and RTP. So yeah, I guess just sort of talk us through that. What are you looking to achieve with that in this year? What are some of the things you're looking forward to? And what are you doing to stay ahead of everybody else?
For sure. And what I love about our partnership with Trustly is that it is just that. It really is truly a partnership. Eric can speak to, I feel like we're constantly just brainstorming, getting innovative together. How can we affect positive change to the end user as well as Trustly sub-merchants, right? I'm excited in 2023 to see Trustly grow their verticals for RTP. What else can we offer, right? We talked about some use cases here, but like we said, in general, I think RTP is where it's going. Also excited to talk about things like FedNow and possible cross-border solutions as they're opening up here at Cross River. For Cross River side, we were actually an early adopter of RTP. And the last 3 consecutive months, we've been in the top 5 processors in the country, which is really exciting. So, we're always looking to be cutting edge with faster payments and what's new in the marketplace, because we know that obviously there is such an appetite for that as we see with our clients and ultimately the end users.
All right, what do you think, Eric? What is on your mind when it comes to this partnership and kind of thinking forward?
It's exciting, right? I mean, so when you talk about innovation and you talk about working with a financial institution, a bank, there's more and more of that happening, but the traditional financial institutions maybe aren't dedicating as many resources to innovating with their clients. Exact opposite with CRB. Adrian and I talk on a weekly basis, sometimes multiple.
I think daily, yeah.
Yeah, daily. Our teams talk on a daily basis. And there's this concept that we have where if we want to innovate, we want to fail fast, right? So that we don't burn a lot of calories and have a lot of resources thinking through concepts or ideas that eventually won't have any traction. So we're able to engage these guys over at Cross River Bank, literally via Slack or an email or a phone call, get folks on the horn within less than 24 hours typically, and bounce ideas off of them. And our driving force here at Trustly is we want to speed up our merchants' cash flows. Cash is king. We're doing that with RTP. We're seeing payouts, leave instantly. We're working with CRB on innovating ways where we can help speed up the other side of that, the pay-ins. So for 2023 and beyond, I really look for our partnership to grow. The number of merchants leveraging RTP. And then when FedNow becomes a reality, certainly integrating that into our process, and we'll have the intelligent routing that I mentioned before, where we can interrogate different payment rails to see what's eligible and use the faster payments when it is available.
Cool. Well, we're about to get into some future-looking pontification type questions, but before we get there, I wanted to sort of talk to the audience for a second directly. If you have questions for these folks, please put them into the thing. We've got a couple come in, but we're going to get to some audience questions here in a minute. So go ahead and get them in now so we can make sure we get to yours. So I want to get back to you, Jake, because I'm thinking about the future and I'm looking forward and I'm saying, what are we expecting from RTP, FedNow, maybe some other emerging faster payments rails, and how are they going to specifically affect the merchant acquiring space? I guess maybe this year, but also looking out maybe 3 to 5 years.
I can talk certainly from our perspective, also just as a user as well. Like if I'm a sportsbook user, I live in New Jersey, I work in New York, and I want to basically have a holistic, simple experience, which includes speed and trust. I think they're probably two words that come to mind. It's basically, how do I give that person, that user, that experience? So I'm not an expert on some of those banking rail side of things, but if I think about it holistically from our perspective, it would be just that single experience. Even when you log on to PointsBet and you use Trustly, there is some externality to it. It feels like something else is happening, because it is. So I think in time, it will feel very simple. It'll feel very organic within PointsBet, I think. And that's something that we're thinking about on our end. I know our partners are thinking about too. How do we make it just a simple, holistic experience for the customer? And not to get too deep or too far, but just so it all feels seamless. Your bank account or your pool of funds that you want to use for gambling, to enjoy gambling, is the same as your PointsBet account, is the same as your Trustly interaction experience. All of that is one, and you can slide your money back and forth in and out as you please, so that if you do bet on the Razorbacks to win against LSU and they're up 28 at halftime and PointsBet decides to pay out at halftime because we're trying to give our customers a great experience and we say, you know what, game's over, here's your money, you can basically slide that straight back into your bank account and go buy a cheeseburger and a beer and celebrate. Those types of things I think are coming eventually. I think the expectation now is certainly being raised to a very high level where it is far more instant. Speed is a criteria that people care about. I think on our end, we just need to balance that with some of the other measures to make sure that there's just stability that goes into the entire thing. And as I said before, some of that we don't control, but the aspects that we do, there's some things we're really thinking about. How do we balance that speed, that transaction volume? Because we do expect, if you can bet on the Razorbacks, finish your bet at halftime, take your money out, go buy lunch. You might have $30 left over after lunch and you want to redeposit, you want to bet again, and you want to withdraw a second half bet, for example. That'll be pretty normal. That's why we've really focused on being live and in play, and it needs to match everywhere. Because if we're the best in play sportsbook in America, but it takes 2 days to get your money in and out, then it's irrelevant, basically. So it's really just working and iterating on the different products that exist today and seeing what the evolution is for the next wave of, I guess, payment innovation. And we're hopeful to be a part of that through our partners. And as you can probably tell, we have some great partners already who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting and thinking for us.
Yeah, for sure. Adrian, what do you think? How are instant payments going to affect the merchant acquiring space?
Well, Reed, something you touched on earlier actually was talking about not just, instant gratification in the payment space, but I think about it just in general, right? Like used to be, it was good enough, you got fast food, you got your food in like 5 minutes through the drive-through. Now it's like, nope, I use my mobile app. I order ahead and I get my McDonald's in 2 seconds when I pick it up. So I think, just in general, again, people want things instantly. I think that's going to just continue with the use of RTP FedNow. The more we're able to enable it, we're going to see it more and more. Same day ACH announced that they're upping their per entry limit to $10 million as of March of this year. I know RTP last year mirrored the up to 1 million, so I'd be interested to see if RTP Network's going to be doing the same and match the 10. If so, I think that's going to open up more use cases, merchant settlement, things like that, higher paying out invoices, if that limit gets increased. But I do think in general, we are going to see more and more adoption. We're going to see, higher limits and things like that so that we can get more money moving faster, bottom line.
Eric, what do you think?
I think there's a lot of work to be done to enable the other side of a payment. So we've gotten B2C and we've gotten traction. We have 5 years of experience with this. RFP, which is effectively a corporate originating a request for payment from a consumer, has gotten 0 to little traction in 5 years. It's been available for 5 years. So there's a couple of reasons why it's not being used widely in the market. Financial institutions need to support it. The user experience needs to be addressed because it is It is very clunky, especially when you compare it to other payment use cases out there. There's a lot of room for improvement, and my hope is that when FedNow comes out with their rail, Trustly is on the drafting committee for the RFP use case for FedNow. My hope is that that RFP use case knocks off some of the hair or some of the dirt that's on that use case and makes it more tenable for users. And if that happens, then we're going to see the expectations of faster payments and the evolution of that expectation really speed up, right? Because now as a consumer and as a professional, I can not only just receive money in real time, 24/7, 365, but then I can also send it in real time, 24/7, 365. So there's a lot of work to be done over the next 3 to 5 years. And I think a lot of it's going to be focused on that other use case.
Yeah, my mind's a lot where yours is, Eric. I think the answer to this question depends a lot on how much time and effort are folks who are interested in that happening willing to put in to building out the experience and building out a common, way for that to happen, the way that more traditional payments have flowed, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a huge, potential, but it's going to require it's not just a matter, like I said before, of the rails connecting two accounts to each other, right? There's so much more that has to happen on the customer experience side to make it an acceptable customer experience when you're thinking about a fast food drive-through, or my former life, the front end of a retail store, or all these different use cases that require that the transaction occur in at most a second. Certainly not 30 seconds or however long it might take with a clunky experience. So I think there's I sort of, as I like to do, I sort of flip it back on like how much work are you willing to put in to make this happen, because it can, but it takes effort. Okay, another forward-looking thing, and we do have some audience questions that we're going to get to once we get through this. What are your thoughts about RTP use cases, like, and Eric just touched on the request for payment or cross-border payments, which is the subject of one of the questions that came in. When can we expect to see faster payment options, specifically in the cross-border space? And let's start with Adrian.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to see first for cross-border isn't necessarily like an actual cross-border. I think it's going to be the OLO transaction, the one leg out, meaning that part of the transaction was overseas, so an international wire coming in, pushing to Adrian's bank account in the US. I do see immediate need in the market for that. My own clients would use that today if they could. RTP does not have, quote, like a ACH IAT equivalent to capture that foreign information. I will be interested to see, though, what the ops compliance perspective of that's going to be, because there's going to be some OFAC implications. So how it's going to affect SLAs and how that's going to work. With ACH, there's obviously rules for that. IATs can only settle T+1. So doing it instantly, I don't know. We'll see how that works out. I think that use case, as well as the use case for an actual cross-border, we're looking 2024 at best. I just think there's so much regulation as far as approvals, everything down the line. To Eric's point for RFP, it's a clunky experience. Like, not only for the user, but if I'm a merchant trying to collect using RFP, it's like it requires the end user to go in and effectively verify the transaction twice. So you may or may not get your money, and when are you going to get it? Even though the payment itself is instant, it requires me to say, yep, make the payment. I do look forward to how RFP shakes out, especially with FedNow. If the adoption is going to get better, what's going to change, right? Because there are definitely lots of good use cases for it, but right now adoption is just very low.
What do you think, Jake? Is cross-border something you guys are looking at and doing today?
Not as a business, we're very localized now, but as an Aussie who lived and worked in Europe for a number of years and is now in the United States, love to see it become far simpler for the end user, which I guess takes a lot of work upstream. So Adrian, I'm on board. Let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
Some of those like French Ligue 1 fans betting on PSG or something. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so as far as cross-border is concerned, I think the expectations just need to be tempered. with RTP when they do come out with a cross-border process for payments. It's not going to be overnight that it gets immediate adoption and immediate scale, just like when they launched 5 years ago. It's taken them 5 years to get 285 financial institutions on the RTP network today. I think in Q3 last year, they did 45 million transactions, which is a lot of transactions, but it's certainly not anywhere near the amount of transactions that's on the ACH network. So when we talk about cross-border, enabling that capability is one thing, and then actually getting the market to adopt it is going to take another. So for pontificating, like when we'll see this become a regularity, it's in the next, no quicker than 2-3 years for other folks to be the bleeding edge of that use case. Yeah, so we got some time before that becomes an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Adrian hit on a really good point, which is that so much of this is about not the technical capabilities, the connecting the computers to each other. It's about the regulatory, legal, contracts, things like that, figuring all that stuff out and making sure you got it all in a way that to what Jake keeps saying, that people trust it and they feel safe and secure in engaging with you that way. Okay. We got some audience questions that have come in. The first one I'm going to go to because it's specifically directed at you, Jake. I'm going to give it to you. It says, have you seen a reduction in customer churn since adding RTP?
A very tough one to track one-for-one in terms of causation, correlation, etc. But I can say what we do know about the customers who are using it is it increases their PointsBet experience, and we have some data to back that up. In a way that we didn't have we had an inferior product in the past, in theory, or in different iterations in the past. So as we continue to move up with forward progress on the payment side of things, which RTP is the main innovation that we've added, it is a enormous benefit, and I would hazard a guess to say it has positively impacted those churn numbers that we've seen.
All right, this is a question that comes up quite a bit, especially in the last 6 months or so. I'm gonna start with Adrian, but obviously anybody else who wants to weigh in too. It says, given the irrevocability of RTP, how do you think about combating potential fraud?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely an interesting one because once the payment's gone, it's gone. I think that is the benefit, right, for the RFP, like the poll equivalent. So if you're an ACH originator and you're having nacho overages and you want to, alleviate that, having that push go through, like Adrian saying, yes, give me the money, push it out. As far as mitigating fraud, I'm not as close to that piece. I don't know, Eric, if you at Trustly have clients that are disputing, end users that are disputing any entries going out, or merchants, any issues on that end.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at like a B2C use case, it's imperative that we treat this money like it's actual cash leaving the door. It's a wire essentially, but it's able to go to the RTP rail. So making sure that the merchants who have enabled RTP are aware that whenever their consumers originate that request to be paid via to have a payout and it goes over the RTP rails, they have the proper metrics in place to interrogate that consumer is who they say they is, who they say they are. Right, and that's actually why sometimes in the Trustly experience, a merchant may have an instant payment notification next to the financial institution because that financial institution is on the RTP rails, but it may take a minute or several minutes for that payment to actually come through, because before the merchant is releasing those funds, they're doing additional checks on their end to make sure that they have the correct approvals internally to release those funds, and that the consumer went through the sign-in process or login process or was validated biometrically to verify that, yep, they are the user who they say they are, and these funds are going to the intended place. Irrevocability is great, but I think as the question implies, it's got some risks associated to it, and fraud is certainly one of those things. So understanding that fraudsters are smart, and they are in the business of being bad guys. They're going to create new ways to fraud the system. So we are conscious of it, ever working with our partners, CRB, as well as entities like PointsBet, to make sure that the right systems are in place to combat any sort of fraudulent activity.
Definitely. Jake, any thoughts on that one? Are you good?
No, I think it's spot on. Eric's spot on. We do those fraud checks, KYC in the beginning. We do withdrawal assessments and reviews both automatically with the technology we have. We have humans looking as well, especially when we get into high dollar amounts. So absolutely, the fraudsters are out there. They're very, very good. They're very sneaky, which makes it an ongoing challenge, and they always evolve and iterate. Like, they're not just doing the same stuff from last year. It's always something new.
All right. We got another one that's for Adrian, and something that I think going to be really top of mind for financial institutions in the next year or two, and that's how is Cross River needed to scale your customer and partner support model to support a real-time 24/7 rail?
I'm sorry, what was the how are we scaling that?
Yeah, basically asking like how have you needed to scale up in terms of staffing and customer support because you're now 24/7.
Got it. We have really built a really good infrastructure, basically making like a fail-safe. We do have 24/7 like basically technical support that is available 24/7 if there is an issue. I think the biggest pain point, which we talked about a little bit briefly, was the liquidity factor, making sure your Fed account is funded properly, especially when the Fed is closed, right? So on a Friday, especially a long weekend, you want to make sure that that is all up to date. So certainly it takes a lot of different departments, a lot of different stakeholders to be on their game, right? Like, it's not just ops making sure everything's running smoothly. You also have to deal with treasury management to make sure that that is all funded. You're not having any IT issues, but essentially we do have 24/7 IT support for our clients to contact. And then, as Eric alluded to, I am always a phone call away if anything implodes at any time. So, but certainly it definitely, RTP takes a village. I will say that for sure.
All right, here's another interesting one. And this we touched on this a little bit, but maybe this is a chance to put some bets down. So it says RTP's reach is around 62% today. Is that the ceiling? I think we all say no. Do you foresee it could go to 90% anytime soon? What would you and then says what would be required for RTP to increase its reach significantly? So a few questions in there, but I think the gist is like, what's the ceiling? We all sort of said we didn't, I don't know, Eric and I at least said we didn't think 100% anytime soon. That doesn't mean never. I'm going to put you back on the spot, Eric. So we're at 62 today. You're saying not going to get to 100 anytime soon. What's the ceiling for the next, say, 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, let me get my crystal ball out. But before I answer that question, I think it's really important to note that of the 285 banks that are on the RTP network, they represent 62% of the deposit market share. We see 80%-ish of our payments being eligible to be sent over the RTP rails. So it's really important to understand that just because there's a small number of FIs on that rail, it's still got the mass majority, 80% of at least the consumers that interact with our merchants. I certainly don't think it's the limit. I think we're going to see that number creep up. Each individual financial institution that comes on the RTP network is going to increase that 62% number very, very tiny. We're no longer going to have a bank that's big enough that's going to bring this up an extra 5%. So in the next 5 years, it might get up to 65%, 67% of coverage from a DDA perspective. But again, that is not the metric that we use to gauge the overall success of it. And I know that we're over time right now, so.
Nope, you're good. I think that does bring us right up to time. So I just want to say thank you. This was a fantastic discussion. You guys did a great job.
Yes, Reed, Eric, Jake, Adrian, thank you so much for joining. This was a really great discussion, and I'm personally really excited about what's going to happen. I hope in the near future, every payment will be an instant one. For the attendees, thank you so much for joining us.